Well, welcome to this week's episode of Conversations That Count. I'm super excited to be joined here with Lisa Jones, who is the founder of SheCom. So welcome firstly.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I just mentioned like the whole kind of reason I started this podcast is because I love connecting with people and hearing people's stories and what they've done with that story then to create impact and inspire others to do the same. And I don't even know how I came across your profile, to be honest, on Instagram. It must have been through someone and I was like, oh, who's this lady? And connected. And there was a story that you shared, which I'm sure we'll kind of go into a little bit more, that resonated so deeply with me as well. And I'm sure it will resonate with a lot of women who listen as well. And then it's not only that, but then how you've used that to inspire others and build this beautiful, incredible brand where you're now helping other women in the e-commerce space as well. So I'm so excited that you're here and super excited where the conversation leads as well.
Great. Very excited to chat.
Yeah. So firstly, maybe did you want to just tell me a little bit about yourself and who you are and SheCom as well?
Sure. So, I suppose at its forefront, I'm a mum. And that's something I'm really proud of and had aspired for a long time to be. So I'm a mum to one beautiful, nearly 14-year-old going on 19-year-old. And I have had 5 stepchildren that I've helped raise. So that's a whole other podcast conversation. But I have had 7 companies in the last 15 years and 3 of them have been multi-million-dollar brands. And I suppose I get misdiagnosed regularly with ADHD, and I don't actually have ADHD. I'm just a real high achiever. I don't like to sit still. I probably talk too fast. I get kicked under the table by people all the time saying, shh, slow down. It's actually just who I am. I suppose I have a vivacious appetite for life, but I am somebody who completes all the projects I start. So I feel really fortunate to have been able to build Eco Originals, which at the time that I was building it was the world's greenest eco nappies and wipes brand. And I went on to sell it. I had an investment from Justin Cameron, who was the Surf Stitch co-founder. They were a $450 million e-commerce giant. And he had a very early interest in Eco Originals, invested, and then ended up buying the whole company from us as I was leaving a DV marriage and getting divorced. So I have many layers of who I am and why I'm here. But in essence, I built a big eco nappy brand and then went on from that exit to realize, what was my next legacy. And it was to support women with building their, e-commerce empires. And that's what I've dedicated the last 5 years to. And now we have over 40,000 women in our community. I have a team of over 40, I think I'm up to 45 or 46 staff this week. I've just done another hire and I'm trying to do one more at the moment. And we're going global with it. We're pretty excited.
I love that so much. And I want to go into so many parts of that story as well. So you mentioned that ADHD and you're a high achiever. Like, what does that actually mean to you? And interesting that you said as well, because I find as females, sometimes people say you have to fit into a box and be quiet or you're too much or, things like that. So how do you actually hold on to your voice and step into your power and, really own who you are in absolutely everything, because that's obviously helped you to be the woman that you are today as well.
It's so interesting that you have found of everything I've just shared that nugget, because you've just reminded me of many corporate stories that sit in the back of my mind because I too, climbed a corporate ladder and worked all over the world in really senior property roles. Actually, I was a commercial property valuer, and in many roles I've been in, I've literally had bosses say, I'm going to kick you under the table if you talk too fast. It's a reminder to slow down. And a lot of the roles I had, and certainly the marriage I had, was about minimizing me. Don't be so big that you take the attention in the room off all of the men. And over the years, I think I've evolved into a business that supports women. It's run by women for women, and we have no men in our team at all. And I guess it would be easy to accuse me then of being a feminist, and I'm actually not at all. But I find it so deeply refreshing to not have to minimize myself for anybody else. And I think in the larger e-commerce industry, I probably intimidate some other women, but certainly the women in my community, I cheer and applaud any of us that are capable of standing up and being bold and courageous and saying what we need to say. And that's become one of the measures of me, is that it's okay to be vulnerable and real and tell it as it is and not sugarcoat anything. And yes, it's okay to be the biggest, best version of myself. And it's probably been most of my life I haven't been given the space to be that.
And you're inspiring others to do the same, right? And as I shared before we started the podcast, like I'm from the corporate background myself and in male dominant environment, and women, yeah, you're right. Like we try to, this is a massive generalization, but yeah, try to fit into the box or kind of go with the flow, where really we've got such beautiful perspectives and ideas and, everything along those lines, and we're so individual at the same time. Your ideas are going to be different to mine, but it's celebrating each other as well. And I think that's so important, and probably why that we're seeing so many women-led businesses come up as well, is to say it's okay to have a voice, and what's your voice and what's your story and how can you step into that more.
And I think it's about having the voice and being bold to share it, but bringing an element of humbleness and compassion. And that's what I feel the men in corporate worlds, in my experience anyway, have lacked, a sense of empathy, and also I suppose not being led by greed. I famously left myself not inked until I was like 44 or 45 years old, and in the last year or two it's been one of my things is to choose really wisely some tattoos. It's, I suppose, a sense of reclamation of self and maybe a celebration of who I am, deeply who I am. But one of the tattoos I love the most, I have a few I'm a really big fan of that probably come up through the potty, but one of them is on my hip. Hidden for me, it's choose kindness, be present, and stay humble. And I think they're really very eloquent ways of saying I can be bold and big, but as long as I choose to listen to others and not talk over other people and retain a sense of kindness in every interaction I have. And it actually came up just recently, and I was genuinely shocked, which doesn't happen very often these days. Somebody said to me, "Oh, with such a big community of women and such a big, team of women, it must be as bitchy as hell in there." And I was like, what? Like, it couldn't be further from that. My team and my clients that are attracted to what we are, we are so humble and so kind, and there isn't a judgmental thing that happens inside of any of our interactions. And in fact, occasionally those women maybe come into our circle, but they break off really quickly and they go off, and perhaps they're bitter and bitchy and they go off and say negative stuff. But that doesn't bother me, because I know at our core where we come from, a sense of goodness. And so I am always shocked when people think that a bunch of women have to be bitchy to be able to be hanging out together, because that's not my reality.
Yeah, and I love that so much. And I know in the past I've had, been in environments where it's all females, and you do have that, and then you kind of get like these sisterhood wounds in a way, that you think that every woman is going to be like that, but it's not. And it's something that I love so much, and I'm surrounded by incredibly powerful women at the same time, and you celebrate each other, and I love that. And I think like I've always wanted that, and so now when you are around those incredible women, it's not tearing each other down. It's like, well, how can we lift each other up, and how can we support each other, celebrate each other in every single moment as well. So I love that so much.
I actually feel at the moment, like when I do my own little check-in, a thermometer check-in, if you like, of how I'm feeling in the world, when I really deeply look at it, my team and my clients and my community, they fill my cup so significantly that I feel complete a lot. And it's not necessarily where it's coming from in other parts of my life, but the women that I'm surrounded by are just, they're literally inspiring me on a daily basis.
I love that. Going back to part of your story as well, so you mentioned that you were in a relationship that wasn't like ideal, and a DV relationship that you left. How do you find the courage and the resilience and the bravery to move through that, and also at the same time focusing on you and building businesses on the side? Like, how do you handle that?
Well, firstly, I want to say that spending 8 years in a domestic violence marriage is something I would never wish upon anybody. It's a truly horrifying place to be. And whilst I, don't wish that upon anybody, I also, having come out the other end, it's, nearly 10 years later, I actually see it as a gift. And I know that's a very difficult thing for some women to find palatable, but what it did teach me is prior to that, I'd come out of the corporate world and I think I had a pretty big ego. And I suppose I see the 8 years in a DV marriage as the death of my ego and the arrival of my compassion and empathy for everyone. And so if I look back on that as the thing that I won in that situation, he didn't win anything. You know, I won everything. And that has probably been the greatest gift. So I'm able to, I mean, obviously it took me a really long time to see that for what it is. I think I've done something like 30 different psychology sessions with different psychologists and counsellors trying to unpack how the hell did I get to that position in the world and why did I stay so long and how did I feel so stuck and, you know, how do I now raise a child? I spent 10 years raising a child with a DV perpetrator who still uses coercive bullying every day. Like literally I'm in the final sprint in court trying to finish off full custody. And it takes a lot of courage to see that for what it is and not let it crumble you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the courage is such a beautiful word there as well, as, you know, I'm sure that women find themselves in positions that they don't necessarily want to be in, and it takes a lot to actually create that change. And then I'm sure it's kind of, as you mentioned, shaped you to be the person that you are today, and going on to then, you know, pass that on through your business at the same time. So I think that's a testament to you and the person that you are as well.
Yeah, I don't want anybody to be to misunderstand this. It took me a very long time to leave, way past the time that I should have left. In fact, they say something like 7 times is the average a woman will leave a domestic violence marriage before she'll finally leave. And I most certainly did that. I moved in and out a number of times. And I suppose I believed the rhetoric of, you know, our love story was the greatest love story of all time and, you know, he'll change and all those things before I eventually realised there's a mental health issue and there was never going to be change because there was no recognition of the mental health issue. And I finally left for the last time. So I don't want anyone to think that I had courage from the start because I didn't. I think we all have a choice when we're faced with adversity of any kind. It could be we end up in a war. It could be, you know, a domestic violence parent. It could be anything. And we're all always given an opportunity to change who we are, to become the bigger, braver person, or to cower in the face of it. And I often look at people who use it as an excuse. Oh, I grew up in a shitty family and therefore I can be a prick. And I just don't agree with that. I don't agree with that on any level. We're always given a choice as to take the adversity and the lessons that we're dealt and to see them for what they are and be the better person. And that's what I've chosen to see and do here. And I think that that's the courage, is seeing it for what it is and recognizing I couldn't have left a minute before because it was part of my journey and my lessons. And, you know, yes, I wish a hitman would take him out sometimes still, but I most definitely am grateful for the lessons I learned.
And I think you said there's lessons in everything, right? And it shapes you and brings you and inspires you now to share that story with other women as well and then go on to create things. How did you then go from that point, which I'd imagine would be a pretty difficult time to navigate as well, to then creating the person that you are today and the business that you've got today as well?
There's so many things that happened in the last 10 years. It's difficult to be able to, in a podcast, tell you all of the things that happened for me. But I think I would surmise it to say I spent 3 years on my own, which was deeply healing. And then I suppose there's the personal realm and there's the business realm. You know, I recovered from doing 90% of building a massive empire and then having it stripped away when I got divorced and we sold the company off to looking at, well, what the hell do I do next? And that was a big evolution in understanding what my genius zones were and how I lever those. And I went down a journey of putting it out there to the world. If I'm a coach, and what am I going to coach? And I waited to see who showed up in that space. And I found my people. It's women with e-commerce. It didn't start there. Like all businesses, it started with tradespeople because I used to own a big $3 million a year trade business as well. So I suppose my version of minimum viable product took me a couple of years to nail. And then when I, launched it as SheCom, it's we're in hyper growth because it's attracted a certain client. And I suppose that's a reflection of me as well. Women are attracted to me because I'm truthful and honest and down to earth. And that's a bit of a bright light in the world that can be quite dull. So that part of it, I suppose the other part for me was that I spent 3 years on my own, and then I fell in love and got remarried. And that journey, I then had a gastric sleeve and lost 50 kilos and reinvented myself with how I finally looked on the outside like I felt on the inside. And they're all, you know, I suppose being loved unconditionally by a man and having a safe home, losing weight and looking on the outside like I always felt on the inside, and then building a successful business and having that reflected back on me. They were all pretty big levers in transforming from the fairly broken woman that crawled out of that relationship literally with nothing. I had to borrow 40 grand off my parents to live for the first year because, like all narcissists, he took all the assets and I walked out with nothing and a 4-year-old daughter. And to survive, I had to borrow money off my parents, who he had estranged me from, and then eventually paid them back. And we have a wonderful relationship, and we're really close now. And fortunately, I own my own home and I have a beautiful car, and, you know, life is looking peachy again. But please don't be under any illusions that I left in a cloud of, you know, roses. It was not at all. It was a cloud of farts.
Yeah, I can imagine it was quite the journey for you as well. And I really appreciate you sharing that as well and being so open and honest about it as well. Because, yeah, as I said, I'm sure that there's a lot of people that can relate to that story and have been in situations where they might not have been. And it does take a lot to create that change as well. So I really appreciate that story that you just shared too.
I have two things as well I'd love to say about this for anyone listening right now who can relate to this story about how do you go from where you were 10 years ago to now. And I think there's two characteristics I have apart from the ADHD high achieving thing. One is, and my beautiful husband says this, and he doesn't mean it to be in any way critical, but he calls me Dory. And I am a bit like Dory, and I think that you need to be a little bit like Dory, which is that you can have the world's shittest day. And I'm a big, deep sleeper. I go to bed early and I wake up early. And when I wake up at 4 or 5 the next morning, I'm like, what's going to happen today? And I think that element of not letting it hold you down is a really, really, really very functionally important piece in all of this.
Yeah.
And I do think that going to bed every night, the second piece is that I go to bed every night and I think, have I just taken half a step forward today? Or did I even just keep my pace today? Am I even just in the same spot, but I didn't go backwards? And incrementally over 10 years, I slowly worked on the building blocks. It didn't just happen like that. They're the two things I think that have been really valuable in my journey, just to keep inching forward slowly by slowly every day.
Yeah, I love that so much, and the self-reflection piece as well. And yeah, it's like every day it's just that little bit, because over time that's what creates that overnight success, right?
100%
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so easy to go to bed sometimes and despair about our days. I mean, there's so many days where something shit's happened and I think, oh God, I just, it was a terrible day. I feel anxious and stressed and I literally say to myself, but did something move forward today? And I can always find something where I'm like, well, actually that did unlock today. So, you know, just need to let go of those other things.
And there's lessons in the bad as well. So if something doesn't go according to plan, whether it was a conversation or a situation or whatever it is, there's always something that comes out of that, and you have the opportunity to actually change it and go, okay, well, how did I create this, or what needs to change for if the same thing happened again? Would I approach it differently? Would I react differently as well? So they're also really great lessons that good can come from that as well.
I completely agree.
Yeah. So SheCom. So can you talk through that in a little bit more detail as well? Because you've got a group of female founders as well. And how do you support them, or you just came back from a business retreat in Bali with them as well. So tell me a little bit more about, the support that you provide.
Well, I guess at its crux, it's that a lot of women who are building D2C product brands are lonely and isolated, and there's a million strategies online, but how the hell do you know which one's the one that's going to move the lever to give you more sales today or tomorrow? And it can be very overwhelming. And I think women in particular can be subject to letting overwhelm paralyze them. That's a really common thing for women in any, especially small business. And therefore we feel like our feet are in concrete and we're not getting anywhere. And so a long time ago, I recognized I suffered from this of occasion and navigated and solved a lot of those problems. And some of the things that I could bring value to in other people's lives was sharing, what did I do in those moments, and how did I build a team or working from home long before COVID decided that was a thing, and how did I make sure they delivered value to the business, and all the things that I was able to find success in. I suddenly started helping other women with those pieces, and it's really steamrolled into a place where, my team of over 40 now help women every day. They're brand founders themselves often that have also been successful in certain things different to me. My genius zones are quite unique, but Gabby, for example, one of my she's actually one of my executives at SheCom, but she also spends 50% of her life building an incredible brand, like a global brand. And she's younger than me. She's 29, and she's all over viral short form video and TikTok. And the stuff she does, sometimes she talks and I scratch my head and I think, I don't really know what you just said, but I think it was really clever. And so I think for me, SheCom has become this incredible community of really diverse women doing incredible things that turn around and share with other women what has worked for them in a probably an education mode mostly. So it's community and education at its core, and we run business retreats. We take space and run women's lounges at a lot of other people's big retail events in Australia, like Retail Fest and Online Retailer and Read and Life and Style. But we also, and probably foundationally, have a couple of online coaching programs for different revenue levels, and that's where we focus the most of our attention in helping our clients, from their homes or offices or warehouses, building empires themselves, and we are their support crew and buddies and mentors in that space.
How great. I love it.
It's so exciting. I know I'm not sure how naughty your podcast is, but I'm a bit of a swearer. And one of the things I've coined just recently that I just think epitomizes what I do every day is that I am entrepreneurially aroused by SheCom, because it is the most exciting business venture I've ever launched. I feel I've finally nailed a unicorn business, which has massive traction because we offer something that is niche and it's very wanted by the women who are looking for this kind of connection education, but it's eminently scalable and profitable. And, for me, we've got a really big exit in mind in 3 years' time from SheCom, and we're building it to go global. We have trademarks in 17 countries already around the world, and I'm entrepreneurially aroused. It's a freaking cool
love
business.
That. Oh my God, I'm going to use that. That's brilliant.
You have full permission to borrow it.
But it's so great, and I love that. And as you said, how many companies did you say that you've had, and now you're here? That's a lot of change and pivoting, and I'm sure challenges along the way. How do you know when to pivot, and how do you know when you're like, oh my God, that is it, that's the one now? And how do you keep moving in the times of uncertainty when it comes to business?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think that probably is one of my genius zones. First and foremost, I definitely trust my own intuition. I'm an empathic kind of I don't necessarily need to even talk in a spiritual or woo-woo sense, but I just trust my gut. And I think that women don't do that enough. And I definitely trust my gut. And I find spaciousness amongst the busyness on a daily basis, but definitely a weekly basis. Like one of my genius little things I discovered a long time ago is if I go and just have an hour Chinese massage, or actually I try and do an hour and a half, 90 minutes, I'm thumbs off my tools because I'm such a ADHD person. I'm always on my phone nonstop. But when I have a massage, for other people it's a surf or a lie in the bathtub or a shower or a walk on the beach. Mine can be all of those things too. But when I give my brain spaciousness to go and spiral out on neural pathways, I feel like as long as I'm listening, I can find incredible gold of things that show up. And so I think, to answer your question in summary, being open to the fact that we need to pivot on a daily basis in our businesses. And I say this and remind my own community of this all the time. Just because something worked last week, or just because I said this is what I'm going to do last week, I reserve the right this week to change my mind and do something different. And anybody who doesn't do that is probably going to end up dead in the water like a Blockbuster or we have to constantly move and evolve.
Yeah. I absolutely love that. And it's something that I probably only learnt really in the last few years, and lean into more of that, where I think when we're taught that when you make a decision, you commit to that decision, and like whether it's a uni degree, whether it's a career, whether it's this, whatever it is, that, okay, I've made the decision, now I have to go down that path, you can change any time that you want. Like, that's the whole point of life and evolution and personal evolution, that you, just because you made a decision today, it doesn't mean that it's the same decision tomorrow, because now you've got the data that from the decision today, that then you're like, okay, I've got all of that evidence, or I've got this, now I want to go this way. And it's such an unlearning in a way, isn't it?
It is. And I think there's like two things again on this. One is a lack of humility. You can't have an ego, or sorry, not a lack of humility. It's having humility, because if you've got an ego attached to an outcome, and I think men are in particular are pretty bad at this, but they're like, I told everyone I was going to do this business. And so they hang on to that. I think in order to pivot constantly, you have to let go of ego, because it isn't about me. And the second piece is therefore it has to be about the customer. And so at every moment of every day, I'm always thinking, what does my audience need? It's probably a little about my team as well. It's making sure that my team are thriving and loving what they're doing. But it's not really about me. I follow where my clients need us to be. And so that is customer focused and lack of ego. They're two really big pieces in being able to pivot constantly, because if you make it about, I told everyone I was going to build this business, and so I have to stick to that. Like I told everyone I was going to do a law degree, and so I have to stick to it, even if it makes me miserable and want to vomit every morning. Like, we have to get off that bandwagon. And I have thick skin. I don't really, like, let's be honest, I say I have thick skin. I actually have really thin skin, but I've learnt, I suppose, because of the DV relationship I was in, I had to learn to put, aluminium raincoat on, if you like, or some kind of protection. So to some extent, I feel like I'm really okay at letting go of whatever everyone else's expectations are of me, and building a business that pleases the crowds. That's really what I do every day.
And it definitely takes a special type of someone to build a business, and because there's a certain mindset that goes along with it as well. So what mindset do you take into when you are showing up every day for business as well, and showing up for other women as well in that space?
I think coming from a place of serving, as I've already outlined already, is absolutely foundational. And my job, say, as the CEO at SheCom, I'm very clear about my job is to actually serve my team, to make sure they can serve our clients. And so therefore, knowing that each and every member of my team is thriving in their role, that's actually my job. Fatigue management, people thriving, they're the things I focus on every day as a leader of an organization. So that's a really important piece here. And I actually just forgot the rest of what you just said.
That's okay. It's totally fine. I was just saying around the mindset.
Mindset. Yeah. Yes, I lost my train of thought on that too. Maybe ask me another question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I love it at the same time. With SheCom and you working with so many incredible female founders, what are some of like the common themes or challenges that you come across that they might have as well? And
I mean, the overwhelm is a really big piece, and I think this is relevant for all of us. I think any woman in this day and age, I mean, I'm the core income earner at home now. My husband has retired and is a house husband, which is fabulous, but it's just more pressure on me to be the nurturer and the financial provider. And I think for a lot of people, that is a lot of women in particular, this is a really big problem in this day and age. I think a lot of women, even if their husbands still work, they are both the provider as well as the nurturer and the homemaker, and that's a lot for women to have to navigate. And so I feel overwhelm is almost like it shows up in adrenal fatigue a lot for women in particular. I suppose the scatteredness. I feel when I look back at myself when I was younger, I don't remember ever having any symptoms of ADHD. But the older I get and the more I build empires and have to serve a lot of people at the same time and deal with a lot of, fires that come up in business and life. And, I suppose my own adrenals become scattered too. And I think they're the prevalent things that women are really having to find solves for. And I think, definitely overwhelm is and it's a killer, because what happens in a lot of cases is that it either debilitates us physically. So a lot of women will show up with all kinds of, physical ailments that can be related back to the adrenal and nervous system overload, but it also stops us in business from growing or achieving, because we get paralyzed and therefore we don't implement the things that need to be done. So for me, when we're giving guidance and advice to other women, it's if you can, just break it down to 3 things to work on right now. And if that feels overwhelming, just break it down to 1 thing to implement right now. So just pick 1 project or piece at work that you can implement that'll help work on the business, and stop getting stuck in the business, which is obviously just a whole topic for an entire other hour of podcast.
Yeah, it's such a key message there that you said as well. And as women, we feel like we have to be it all in all capacities, and it's learning what's important, what's not, what I can let go of, where I can ask for support, where I can ask for help. And it's hard, I think, like sometimes to ask for that support and that help and get what you need at the same time, rather than going, I have to do this all on my own. And no, you don't.
It's so difficult because if you think about it, I'm a CEO and founder of a company doing many millions of dollars a year, and I have a huge team. I also have 3 dogs and a teenager and a husband at home and a bunch of step kids, and I have elderly parents here on the Gold Coast. And if I was a man, it would be totally reasonable for me to make demands of the support that I should be receiving around me. But I feel guilty, asking my parents to come and stay and look after my daughter if I need to travel for work or other pieces. And I think I feel like people label me a diva. I feel like my family sometimes look at me and like, oh, here she goes again. She wants us all to do these things. But if I was a man, nobody would question it because I would be the provider and the CEO of something incredibly exciting. And I just think for women, it's like somehow we're not allowed to, we're divas or we're precious, It just, I find that a little tiring sometimes.
Yeah. We need to change the narrative there, don't we?
I'm trying really hard, and I'm stepping into my CEO space and remind those around me sometimes, when they label me or diva me in those moments that actually I'm responsible for a lot of people's mortgages this month. So let's focus on helping me build a business and empire.
Yeah. And it's a support network around you. Like, it's not a one-person show when you're coming to build a business. Like, it's important to have everyone around you that is clear on that direction and on the same path as you as well, that can actually be there for you if you need something. They can support in whatever is required at the time.
Well, that's probably one thing I feel very excited and humbled about, that I believe is one of my genius zones, is that I am, there's a book called Multipliers, and in Multipliers, if you're a multiplier, there's a thing called being a talent magnet. And I think like all good business books, I read about 30% of the book and then give up. But in the first 30%, I discovered that I am a talent magnet, and it makes absolute sense to me. A lot of my team have never even applied for roles that were advertised. They have showed up at the moment at which I need them, and I look after team exceptionally well, and I think therefore I am very supported, and I have a lot of people who believe as strongly in SheCom as I do, as the core shareholder in the business. And I think that's an absolute gift for me, that I'm not beating a drum on my own. There's a whole crew of people beating drums, and so it's loud and it's cohesive and it's in beat, feels, that's why I'm entrepreneurially aroused. It's incredibly exciting to have so many people behind what we're doing.
Yeah, so great. And I just want to say to listeners, like, although that we're talking about an e-commerce business, this is relatable across whether you're in corporate, whether you're working in business, or whether like services or e-commerce. It's across the board. These are like skills that you need as a person and as an individual behind all of that as well.
Well, interestingly, I am an e-commerce expert, but my business, SheCom, is not an e-commerce business. It's a service business. So we essentially offer education services and we run events. So we're actually a service business, and this has been really complex for me to navigate because for the last 5 years, I've had to retain my e-commerce status at the same time as build a service business. And so that's 2 skill sets to master and navigate at the same time, as opposed to, just being an expert in one. Makes it a little bit more complicated. But SheCom is most definitely a service business, and I believe very strongly in building community. And I think businesses that focus on servicing a community will, regardless of recessions and, global COVIDs and bumps, I believe if you're servicing a community, you'll always be able to make money. You just have to maybe pivot in how you do it. But that's where I'm very passionate about that topic.
Yeah, I love it. You're passionate about it. Let's go into a little bit more as well. So from a community aspect, what does it mean for you and why is it so important as well?
It's a great question, and I've had an opportunity even just in the last 24 hours to see how important community is to me. So as you mentioned, I just took 50 women to Bali. It's my 5th time we've run a retreat, and that's over 200 women that we've taken on a huge journey. It's not a detox juice fast kind of retreat. It's very much a cup filling business retreat. So we feed and we stay in beautiful places and we have massages, and it's very amazing, but it's very fast paced and hectic because I bring 12 of my coaches and we literally get deep and dirty in businesses and we help them to rebuild strategies inside their businesses. So they leave with actionable plans for the next year. So they're amazing, but they're intense. And the intense journey that we take over 5 days and 5 nights forms really, really strong bonds. And so the women who've journeyed with me on retreats, we're one of those slow-mo movie moments where we all run at each other at events, arms out wide open, and people get so like, oh my God, what did I miss out on? How do I get in on that hug? And it's pretty funny. But the reason I mention this is that just in the last 24 hours, the ladies that we've retreated with 2 weeks ago, we're still bantering every 3 or 4 minutes. A WhatsApp message goes into the group. But in the last 24 hours, it's actually been 7 or 8 different women's domestic violence journeys have come out and been shared in the WhatsApp group on typed messages because it's a safer space to share it. And we've actually split it off into its own little chat now of women who've had DV journeys that need support and to share. And I think that pretty much epitomizes what community is for me. And it's women feeling connected and safe to share what's real and what's in their next part of their, like a layer of an onion, if you like, that they need to peel back to have their next piece of success. And perhaps that's sharing the vulnerable bits. And that's what I'm really proud of in building a community. It's offering a space for women to, we've helped women go from $1,000 a month to $500,000 a month in revenue. Like we've got the business skills, but we also help them on a personal level. We love them, we hold them, we're supportive, we're not competitive and we're not judgmental. And I've just, I suppose, watched a lot of International Women's Day events, and probably sometimes I get a bit of FOMO that we're not, I suppose, cooler, or we don't hang out with all of the, the women that are on stages doing all these things. And then I look at my community and I think, my women are the real women. We're the women behind the scenes that don't need to put on, stilettos and a mini and strut around on a stage having videos taken of them. That's not me, and that is not my community. And we're very clear about that. My community is loving and kind and empathetic and definitely wants to make money.
Yeah, I love that so much. And business coaching is personal coaching at the same time, right? You can't have one without the other, and vice versa.
Your business is a reflection of your personal world.
Exactly.
And if you're struggling in your personal world, your business will be struggling to make money.
Yeah, that is key right there. How do you continue to evolve as a person as well, and what's your journey? And you mentioned SheCom, you've got an exit strategy there as well. So I probably just asked you a million questions all in the one then. But yeah, like, how do you evolve as a person, and what's next for you?
That's a difficult thing to answer because I don't really have a definitive thing. I think the pivot in the business is the same in my personal life. It's checking in regularly. I'm very driven at the moment. I have a nearly 14-year-old sitting outside the podcast studio right now who is very much my world and my reason, and that changes as I unfold what she needs in her life right now. And I think stepping her into, she just actually attended our Bali retreat, and she got to spend 5 days and 5 nights with 50 women. And I was, a minute before we decided to take her, a few days before the retreat, I would have said she was too young to attend. And then she's just transforming into this young woman at the moment, and she got so much out of the Bali retreat. And I think to some extent I'm driven to provide financial security for her and for me, so that we are always going to be safe regardless of, which men are in our world. And I want for her to never be in a situation that I was in where I didn't have an out. And so I'm very driven to financially build that for her and I.
Yeah.
But I think also about enjoying the world and enjoying life and showing her the best of kindness and compassion and caring. And that's very much, she's not succeeding at school in the traditional sense, as did I not also either. I think a lot of entrepreneurs really fail at school because we don't see things the way that an academic will see things. And I want for her not to feel, have her confidence busted by that, but to actually feel capable and incredibly energized by the world. And she doesn't at the moment from school. So that's my goal, is to shift that around and help her feel expanded.
Oh my God, my little heart when you just said all of that, like how incredible that you're showing her a different way. And I believe like the schooling system, in my opinion, is not great. And, you know, we get pigeonholed into it has to be a certain way. So the fact that you're showing her that there's something different and the women there is showing her something different. And that's where it starts, is at home and when you're a child and when you're growing up as well. So that in itself is just so powerful. So yeah, how beautiful that you were able to share that with her.
To all the mamas out there that think that they're teaching their kids the best thing and wait and hope the lesson lands. You know, my daughter's literally about to turn 14 and I can see all the last 14 years of groundwork I've put into teaching her these lessons are all of a sudden showing up. I thought for a long time, I was like, oh, wiping sweat off my head. Is this going to actually land? My family were like, you're parenting in a kind of unusual way. You're sure this is the right thing to be doing?
It is your way.
It's my way, and I see every moment of every day right now that it was the right way because I'm raising an absolute leader. She's inspiring me right now, and so that's it
makes it worth it.
It does make it worth it.
What was her biggest takeaway from the week in Bali then?
Well, I don't know. We'd probably have to ask her that. But what I witnessed in her is a child who was able to look in the eyes of every woman that was there and talk to them, and talking is a lost art amongst these TikTok generation. And so my win was getting that out of watching her, and I can only assume that really filled her up as well, because I asked her in the car yesterday, you know, babes, do you want to travel more with mummy when I do work stuff? You know, do you want to be more involved in my SheCom world? And she was like, yes, mum, I do. And so I would say it's that. Like, her win was just seeing that mum isn't just mum. Mum is like a leader and has staff and women look up to her.
Incredible businesswoman.
Right. I've never taken her to any of my business things before now. So when she calls me thumbs, or my husband calls me thumbs when I'm always on my stupid iPhone and I'm not present because I'm running around, you know, building businesses. I think that was the moment at which the penny dropped and she was like, oh, I see what my mum does now. And so, yeah, I feel for both of us. We've had a huge awakening literally in the last few weeks that fills my heart with so much joy and excitement and makes everything worthwhile.
Yeah, I love that so much. You mentioned about entrepreneurs are built different, and you said that you're a high achiever as well. What do you think are some of the skills that makes a really successful entrepreneur?
I think a lot of them we've already discussed, the ability to pivot with no real notice and not to take it personally. I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't do that. But I mean, one that we haven't really talked about, I suppose, would be a knack of seeing something that's needed in the world. And I do see that a little bit where people will identify, well, I wanted that, so I'm going to create that product. But the bit a lot of people fail to execute on here is the understanding that you can create an amazing product or service, but you then have to be able to sell it. And the selling and marketing of it is where a lot of entrepreneurs fail. And that's why there's a lot of, you know, failed entrepreneurs who fail many different businesses, is because they fail to recognize you can have an incredible product. It could be the world's best product. But unless you can work out how to sell it and repeat sell it, where you're solving someone's genuine problem, then that's where I think a lot of people don't get it right. And I feel that's something I've navigated really well, is like, how do we, like, I would say I'm not a natural salesperson, and it's true, I'm really not, but I have had to become really good at marketing and sales. I've always tried to shy away from them because I love connecting with people, but I don't really like asking for the sale. It feels a bit icky to me, and I've had to get the fuck over myself there, because if you don't ask for the sale and you don't get sales and you don't focus on selling, you can never make any money. So I think that's probably a combination of things, but definitely a very important lever for an entrepreneur.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you in the sales, and people connect with people. And if you, they're kind of like, in a way, doesn't matter what you're selling. Like, if people buy you, right? So it's about how do you connect with them on their level as well, and they'll already have that buy-in. And it's something that I'm learning myself through my other business as well, because it is a skill to have.
Oh, it's really it makes a lot of people very awkward, is the understanding that, you know, you might solve someone's problem, but you've got to ask for the sale, or you've got to put yourself out there to get the sale. You've got to, like, literally show up on camera, or, like, you know, invest in marketing and selling. And that doesn't mean outsource it to an agency, cross your fingers and hope it's going to work, because that never works. It's about taking it on yourself, even if it's an agency running it, but it's owning every square inch of it. And a lot of people don't understand how important that is. And I can honestly tell you that the only really successful people I've come across in any, and I've interviewed hundreds of women on stages and on my podcast as well. Probably the key piece in all of it is that really successful women are really good at getting sales and marketing. If you don't do that, you're dead in the water.
Yeah. That's really great advice.
It is.
I'll take that on board myself.
Sorry to all the listeners right now who are like, gulp, that's the bit I hate doing. And honestly, if I had a dollar for every woman who said to me, but I just want a business partner who can take over that side of the business. And I'm like, it doesn't work. It just literally never works. You have to. If you're not comfortable with learning how to sell and market your service or product, you need to go and work for the man. Sorry, but you do. And that's okay. That's 100% okay.
Yeah.
Find peace in that, because there's something amazing about getting a paycheck every fortnight that you don't need to sell and market yourself to achieve. But you have to be able to sell and market yourself if you want to be any kind of successful business person.
Yeah. Such great advice. I'll take that on board for myself. Thank you. What's inspiring you at the moment? To whether that's through a person, a podcast, a book, or something along those lines. What's your biggest inspiration? You did mention your daughter. Outside of that,
yeah, look, I'm actually really looking up to at the moment another coaching empire who are about a year ahead of us. And interestingly, I'm very much about tangible things that I can see that make me excited. I don't love loose theories. I'm not a really big, even though I'm 4 years podcasting myself, I don't know if I should mention this, but I'm not really big on business books and other people's podcasts. I find loose theories of people. I find loose theories of people who haven't done the work themselves. I just can't be bothered. But the thing that really gets to me is when I can physically actually taste the trail of somebody's vapors that they've just done what I need to do. And in this case, it's another business empire that I was able to connect with late last year. And, my head of sales now talks to their head of sales, and I talk to their, the owners of that, and they're sharing down the line with me, here's what you need to do to get the peer exit for the, 3-year, $50 million exit you're looking for, Lisa. These are the numbers they want. They want a 30% net profit, and it's, minimum $5 million a year net profit, and etc. Like those pieces, my God, they keep me awake at night. Like tangible business success stories that I can take, and I can, rub it all over my business and think, how do I make my business emulate that? That shit gets me juicy.
I love exactly what you just said then. And it's knowing, who do I want to model? So you found a business that is modeling, that you can model, and who doesn't necessarily have to be a million steps in front of you. They just have to be that one step in front of you. And I love that they've reached out their hand and you've essentially taken it, right? Where they're not competition in a way. They're there, you can model them and you can help each other grow. And I think that that's such a key lesson that we can all learn in that. It's about modeling, and then who can you actually, learn from at the same time.
Yeah, and I think for me that's about paid mentoring. So I've always invested, hundreds of thousands of dollars now in the last 15 years into paid mentoring. And this particular relationship came about because I was in a paid mentoring circle and I found this other business owner in there, and I'm no longer in that paid mentoring circle, but we then don't pay each other for information, but we have an exchange that's equal. So there are things at SheCom we've nailed that they haven't nailed. So we give them all of our collateral and information and strategies. And then there are things that they've nailed and their revenue is way ahead of us. So we're going to, help each other in that space. And I think for people listening right now that are like, well, where do I find my next person? I think I would start looking for those in a paid mentoring circle. Yeah. So that's what we offer at SheCom. For women who want to follow in the footsteps of people and understand the exact strategies they've leveraged to get there. Come and join us in a coaching sense. If you're not in e-commerce and you're not a female, find your version of that and go and look for the people that you can look up to, because that, I believe, if I was to, sum it down to a thing that I've done that's been clever in my business journey, it's always having a mentor to look up to and be constantly evolving and learning myself. And, my next piece is I want to, probably most likely go off this year and become an AI CD. So become a company director. Like if I'm going to be the CEO and build a massive company for exit, I need to be the best director of a company I can be, even if it's my own. Yeah. And so it's constant professional development and looking for the next piece of learning that I need to unpack.
So much value in that, isn't there? Yeah. Is there anything else, any advice that you want to give our listeners today as well, or anything that I haven't asked that you were hoping that I would cover off that you wanted to share as well?
No, I don't think so. We've covered some amazing topics today. I think just I have a tattoo. I did say I would come back to more tattoos on my arm. So one more that I'll share, which I recently had done as well, which is a saying on my arm that says, "Fortune favours the brave." And I'm such a fan of being brave and courageous. And in business, that is for me now, but clearly it's had moments in my personal life as well. But I think if we can wake up every day and think, how do I be brave today? Like what's courageous right now? And my other favourite saying ever is life is either a great daring adventure or nothing at all. And those two things pretty much sum me up. I'm all for going big or, what's the point?
Yeah, absolutely. Just jumping in head first and see what happens.
Calculated risks.
Yeah, love it. I thank you so much for your time today. I've absolutely loved the conversation. I've loved your energy as well and so many great insights into everything that you've shared. So I really appreciate it. And looking forward to where SheCom goes next.
Well, that's it. Thanks so much. And anyone that's interested, you can check us out on shecom.co.co, SHECOM.co.
Perfect. Thank you so much.